What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Morello Show, episode number 18. I did have to look that up again before we pressed record. I am losing track. This is not good. Anyway, of course, I'm your host, Kyle Morello. And with me today, very special guest, former coworker of mine from the Mitten State, right about here, Grand Rapids, Michigan, Erik Kostrzewa. How we doing?
Things are going smoothly out here in the Centennial State in Colorado. It's interesting moving from a state that you have been in your entire life, but it's been fun, and I think it's a good problem that you have, that you can't keep track of the number of episodes, because that just means you keep pumping them out and out and out and everything. So major
Thank you.
props to you for that.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm trying. Honestly, I've been behind a little bit, but we're gonna start to pick back up here. So no
Sweet.
worries on that. But yes, you moved to Denver recently. Like, tell everybody about that. Like, how has that been? What are you doing?
Yeah, so it's always interesting going from a like completely flat state, kind of like Michigan, where you can see a lot, when you look off in the distance, but and coming off to a very mountainous, very nature centric sort of state. We had the lakes and everything in Michigan, but 6 months out of the year, you're stuck inside because of the
Correct.
snow and the cold and just the nasty weather. So I'm hoping that's a little bit different out here, which I've heard good news that they're one of the sunniest states. And I'm still getting my feet under me, but it's been a good ride. And started with WeatherNation in May, which is a national weather network or weather station. We don't do any news, so it's just weather centric. Kind
It's
of
not
like,
always a
I'm
bad
sure.
thing.
Right. And I'm sure everyone has heard of the Weather Channel. So we're kind of like 1-1 with them, we're competition to them. So it's been interesting to grow in that role, because, you're not talking about just one city, one state, you're talking about all 50 states. And you're focusing on things that you may not have ever talked about in the state that you came from. Like, these past couple of weeks, it's been hurricanes and the tropical storms, which I'm sure you've at least encountered with Henri.
Little bit.
But
Yes.
we don't get that back in Michigan. So it's been a lot of learning new things, and I'm sure once winter comes, I'll have a lot under my belt because of how bad the winters are in Michigan. But it definitely, this summer, it's been a lot of, we haven't done wildfires, we haven't done hurricanes, we've rarely done severe weather in Michigan. So talking about that each and every day, it's definitely been a learning curve.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's definitely like I couldn't imagine. Not that I'm a meteorologist at all, obviously, we know this, but I couldn't imagine, where because we do have the shared experience of being from Fox 17 in Grand
Mhm.
Rapids, Michigan. So I know that you have 3.5 minute weather segments twice an
Yeah.
hour, covering Western Michigan, which is not a small area, but it's not all 50 states. Like,
Right.
you had mentioned, now you have to cover hurricanes and wildfires, stuff like that. Like, what has been, I guess, the easiest thing for you, or what have adjustments have you had to make in terms of that? I know you briefly touched on that, but like, I guess a more overall like
Yeah.
description.
Yeah. And like you were saying, back in local news, the meteorologist maybe are on for half an hour or an hour, or maybe even longer if you're doing like the morning show, or late in the evening, where they kind of stack shows one after the other after the other. That's basically it times 1,000 here, because you're with one coworker, but you're not doing any news. So you got to fill all that time with weather. And we get some commercial breaks, obviously, 2-3 minutes after a 7 minute back and forth with your coworker, talking about all of the big headlines that you have for the day. But there are some instances where I'll be talking maybe 4 or 5 minutes straight, and then I got to do it again in 3-4 minutes. So I'm starting to see, especially with the news, because of the anchors, that they basically are on every single block, every single chunk of time that you come back from a commercial break or something like that. So it's kind of getting to that, but weather centric. And a lot of water out here because it's so dry. The elevation doesn't help me, especially being from Michigan, and talking a ton. Things start to get a little bit raspy after a while, voice wise.
Oh, I'm
So I
sure.
kind of I started to sound like I just smoked a pack of cigarettes or something like that after a few hours. So it's a lot. It's been definitely a challenge, especially when you're the focus of the show. You're not splitting it up between weather, some breaking news that happened, sports, even, to kind of give you a break. You're it. So it's been a challenge, but it's given me a lot of experience already in just the few short months that I've been here. Because when I go into work, I'm on air for probably 5 hours of my day. So, and then behind the scenes, you're getting ready for your next show. So just going through those motions, and the system that we use, which is a Barron's weather system, was completely different than I had ever used in my limited experience in local news. There's two different computer software systems that the weather people usually use, and I use the other one in my first 5 years of being on TV and being a meteorologist. So that was also a learning curve. So I'm still learning things day by day, especially with certain weather phenomenons like the tropical storm that moved through the Northeast. It's interesting to see people who have done that and came from a tropical location, like down into the Southeast, who have gone through that, and just kind of picking their brain and learning from them a little bit more with all the stuff that I haven't technically or really been accustomed to in Michigan.
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of different weathers everywhere in the United States.
Yeah.
So it's that is a thing. But you mentioned like how much of a different kind of challenge it is that you're not only on air for like a few minutes at a time, you're on air for like
Mhm.
hours pretty much at a time. Is that something you like more than doing it like the local news way, or is it just different?
It makes the day go by so much quicker. And I think that once you get into local news, you can get through like the prep and the forecasting, and then still have a large chunk of time that you're kind of just looking at maybe the future forecast, or if there's something on the website or any help that you give to the news side of things, you're probably doing that. So it's not mainly weather focused. And there were some days, in local news when there wasn't a whole lot happening. You really have no idea what to fill that 3.5 minutes with. You're starting to pick from, the little bit that you have. Like, let's say it's a sunny 7 day, and there's not any storms, there's nothing that you can break down. It's kind of just typical weather for that time of the year. It gets a little bit rough and difficult when you don't really have a ton to talk about. And that can make the day go by slower, and that can be a little bit of a challenge when you're trying to fill that time. But here, since I'm talking about every single state, you'll find something to talk about. You'll find something that's happening on the West Coast, or you'll find something that's happening into the tropics, or it doesn't have to necessarily be one state that you focus on, because you have such a wide real estate to work with. It makes the days go by faster. And I think that's one thing that I really do like about it, because I feel like I'm contributing, and I feel like I have a good use of my time when I go into work every day.
And that's always a good thing. You don't
Yeah.
want to waste any time. So good. Um, Now, funny question ish. Uh, there's at least this is a debate between me and my mom had the other week, but
Mhm.
I feel like there's a misconception around what like percentage of chance of rain means. I feel like there's
Yeah.
there's like people have one meaning. I'm pretty
uh,
sure there's actually another like actual meaning for it. Can you help clear this up for me?
it's funny that you say that, because I just got this question like a couple of days ago. I think this all blew up from a TikTok video,
I think so.
where somebody brought this topic up, and then meteorologists started to jump on board and kind of break that down. But usually, when you're talking about a percent chance of rain or snow or anything that's happening, if you're getting toward like 80, 90, 100%, 100%, obviously you're likely going to get rain. But when you're in that 20 to 40 range, it's such an isolated chance of rainfall. The odds that you see it are not very high, but it's like, if we have a 20% chance of rain and storms, it's more so along the lines of you have a 20%, like 20% of the area that you're forecasting for is probably going to see rain.
That's what I'm trying to
So,
tell my mom the
right.
other week. She didn't believe me. I was like, Mom, I saw this TikTok. You gotta
Mhm.
believe me. But now it's been cleared up by a meteorologist. So thank you.
And
Yes.
yeah. And I think it's good for people to know that, because if they see like a 20 to 30% chance of rain, you likely are not going to see anything.
Right.
But if you do, you're one of the rare few that's in that 20% that will see something. That's, it is kind of a drag, especially if you've got plans outside and you see there's a 20% chance of rain, and then it ends up hitting you, which you become that 100% chance of getting something, obviously, when
Right.
it verifies and when it happens. But I would say if you have that 20% chance, don't go about the day worrying that you're going to get rain. It's such an isolated spot that we'll probably see that 20% will have some sort of rain, and it may be heavy rain, it may be light rain, it may be quick moving, it may not. But I would say that because there's such a low percent chance, you shouldn't really worry about it or change your plans or anything like that. But yeah, it was interesting to see like this discussion pop up recently, because it also kind of, in a way, made me think about how I'm explaining those percent chances for rain and thunderstorms and snow on my daily basis. So just to kind of get a learning experience out of that was something that I took to heart too.
No, definitely. I can definitely help you improve your uh forecast telling skills. So that's definitely not bad at all. I want to go back a little bit though. Um, obviously you said you were in news for 5 years. Now you're at WeatherNation and you went to college for this. How
Mhm.
did you when did you realize like you wanted to do this? Like how did that idea kind of come about for you to want to be a meteorologist? Take me through that.
So this happened probably when I was like 4 years old. There's always been that lingering wonder and excitement for the weather. Um, my parents always tell me that on the old VHS tapes, when I was 4, 5, 6 years old, and that's how they would, videotape our birthdays and Christmas and stuff like that. I would always find something weather related to talk about. So it started at a young age. There weren't really too many, I guess, opportunities growing up to, go take classes or have something in middle school or high school that you can learn just about the weather. So I had to kind of do that all on my own on the side. Look through things when I wake up early in my life. Kind of go through the National Weather Service and all their products that they put out, and just try and learn on my own. So when I got to college and I could major in it and it was most of my classes, that's when that passion really started to explode. It was always there, but I never really got to get down and dirty with, well, how do we forecast, what goes into that forecast, and what are we looking at on a daily basis, and what should we be doing on a daily basis to make sure that that forecast is as accurate as possible.
Yeah. No, I mean, I feel like there's definitely a lot that has to go into that because that's a very important job. I wish they offered more things like that in high school. Maybe I would have tried it. You never know.
Mhm.
But yeah, no, I mean that's awesome. And another thing that you do with your meteorology, I guess, is the Twitter videos. I had to talk about the Twitter videos.
Yeah.
Where did that get started? I think I know the answer, but where did that get started?
um
And it's like
it
explain what they are too. I don't know if anybody
yeah,
will
yeah, yeah,
know,
yeah.
but
So you can always, it's just my first and last name on Twitter if anybody wants to go check out a few of those.
and
But
I'll have it up
um
too.
okay, sweet. So it got started because I was going through that daily routine of, well, I have to use social media for work. That's a big piece of being in media and being on television. That's one of those spots. That's one of those pieces that you have at your disposal to kind of branch out and brand yourself a little bit more. So it got to the point where I was getting 1 or 2 likes on Twitter, and I had 300 followers, and I was like, well, if I keep going down this path, I'm never going to be able to grow myself or my brand outside of just people watching on their television or on their phone or online, which has become, a little bit less and less. It feels like each and every year people are going towards streaming, and they have, the weather app on their phone or something like that. So it just kind of got to the point where, I had the tools at my disposal with the green screen and everything that we had at the station, that I could prop wise just kind of, I guess, meld into a forecast, but do it in a way that, if you're scrolling through Twitter, it's not just going to be that just says it's going to be sunny and 80. I'll probably just scroll right past that, or maybe give it 1 second to look, but you're never going to like focus in on it and want to, watch it or have any connection to it. So I tried to connect my feelings towards the weather. Like if it was a bad weather day, if we were going to see 12 inches of snow, I could kind of be the sarcastic meteorologist and be like, this sucks. And I know it sucks. And I want to show people that I'm on the same page. I'm not just telling you the weather, but I'm experiencing it too. And, I wanted to do that in a creative way so that, eventually if I did this for a good chunk of time, people would come back and, see, okay, what does he have brewing today? Or what can I expect today from him, but also get that forecast at the same time.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and you've had some great ones, and you had the whack-a-mole one. You showed me a bunch. You had an Anchorman one too, I think. There's just Oprah with the interview with the royal family. Yep. He's had some creative ones. So if you haven't seen already, make sure you follow him. Like I said, I'll have the at below, so you can do that. But switching gears a little bit too, you are a U of M grad.
Yes.
And I know we know where we're going with this. College football starts
He should
on
be
Friday.
fired. I'll just start with that.
I mean, yes, that was going to be one of my questions.
Okay.
And we can get into that. But college football starts on Friday or Saturday. I'm sorry. College football starts on Saturday, the 28th. I'm not sure when U of M's first game is. I don't know if it's that week or the next week. But down year last year, obviously. What are we thinking for Big Blue this year?
I don't really have any confidence in that team or that coaching staff or anybody that's, I guess, related in some capacity to Michigan football, just because, it's been this constant, just falling short with Harbaugh here at U of M. And then once it got into last year and they were kind of using COVID as an excuse, I know there's no ever way to prove that, towards the end of the season, because of how bad things were up to that point, that they were or were not kind of using COVID as an excuse to duck the last few games, especially because they really didn't come out with numbers. And, the Big Ten had those guidelines or baselines, percentage of the team that has been, in close contact with somebody who tested positive for COVID, and there wasn't a vaccine readily available for anybody to get at that point. So it was just kind of like a very disappointing season, because I felt like if they had a good group around them, they were going to try everything they could to get on the field. And just with what Harbaugh has put around him, he's had very good years. I'll give him that. But it just seems like in the moment, in those biggest moments, he falls short. And that's why against his rivals, he has a couple of wins and no wins against Ohio State. And I think Michigan State, he's even in his career, like 3-3. So, you're getting towards just a very mediocre product that you're getting. So there's really no confidence in this year from me, just because of, they lost a lot of people to transfers. They weren't good last year. So if you're losing some of the better players because they want to go transfer to a team where they think maybe we can win a championship, or maybe I can be closer than what I had at Michigan, you're starting fresh basically, and he has a fresh new staff around him, and just basing it off of the last couple of years, which have been pretty mediocre, and starting over with the staff. And he just got a new contract that was half of what his starting contract was, so I'm sure his motivation is down. It doesn't really incite confidence in myself, and I'm sure many Michigan fans, which some may come after me for that, especially the diehard fans who think that every year is going to be our year.
Right.
But there really hasn't been anything in the last decade or two that you can really hang your hat on, because Michigan hasn't won the Big Ten, hasn't gone to Indy since the early 2000s. So I think it's just to the point where we should have started new with a new coach and a new staff. I mean, we're kind of already starting off with a new staff, but I think a new coach just to breathe some different light into the staff and into the team, and then maybe in a couple of years down the line they have something to work with, rather than just kind of kicking the can down the street and going through the same motions every single year. So I don't really have too many high expectations for Michigan football this year. And my focus is on basketball, because they actually have a good product, and I know that doesn't start for several months after football, but I think that's when I would get more excited to at least watch some Michigan college sports.
Oh yeah, I mean, well, before we go back to football, quick, I will say that the Michigan basketball program has taken over as the dominant one in of U of M. Like Juwan Howard's done a great job recruiting. They're gonna have a whole bunch of good prospects coming in this year. I think they would have won the national championship last year if Isaiah Livers didn't get hurt. I would have picked them at least, which means they probably wouldn't have won, but that's a different story.
Right.
But yeah, going back to football, like to Harbaugh's credit, he did have some really, really good teams. And there was the one blown call against Ohio State in like 2016, 17, whatever that was.
Yeah.
The Curtis Samuel one. That team could have won a championship, in my opinion, or at least competed with I think it was Alabama or Clemson that year. I forget exactly. Obviously it's been those two at the top for the better part of the last decade.
It seems like they just keep switching back and forth.
For the better part of the last decade, yeah.
Yeah.
So
but
there's oh no,
yeah,
go ahead. Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, he's had some good years, but like you said, he has not beaten Ohio State. He didn't beat his rival in Urban Meyer at all before he left. Hasn't beaten Ryan Day. And they just haven't been except for that one, maybe a couple years where they were a top 5 team and they fell a little bit short, which, it does happen. It's the toughest conference outside of the SEC in football, in my opinion. Some years, honestly, it might even be tougher just because sometimes the quality of teams in the lower half of the SEC aren't necessarily as good as, the Big Ten. That's a year-to-year thing. Though overall, the SEC is normally better. But besides the point, he hasn't just done it. Like Michigan, like you said, hasn't been that good since the early 2000s and the late 90s when they had Charles Woodson and all that. It might be time. He did just get an extension though. And like you said, I know it's for half of what his original signing was. Maybe that does motivate him more, and he wants to prove it and he wants to stay there because obviously he's an alumni. But this is a big deal this year because last year they had some expectations. I remember they were a 22-point favorite against Michigan State the second week, and then they lost. I bet on Michigan State that game. I was smart.
Did you really?
I think so. I bet on their spread. So
okay.
But yeah, he hasn't proved that he can do something like Urban Meyer, even Ryan Day getting to the college football playoff, Dabo Swinney, he hasn't done that. You know what I mean?
Right. So
this year's probably a big year. He might get next year if this year's okay. I think after that, if you don't see a 10-2 and 11-1, something like that, I think it's time.
And I don't know if you want to touch on this, but their alignment with the ACC and the Pac-12, that news coming out today, I feel like the road is just going to get harder for him, not easier.
Oh yeah, because now you're going to go through Clemson. I don't know the exact ramifications of it yet. I don't think that's really come out per se. But if they're in a conference with the Pac-12 is they have their own issues, whatever, but you'll still have a couple teams you have to deal with. But they have to deal with Clemson, I think Virginia Tech's going to come back up soon. I think the same with Miami, hopefully at least because they're obviously big name programs. Um, but at least Clemson, along with the entirety of the Big Ten, which Michigan State's usually always pretty good. Obviously Ohio State's the top dog. Minnesota's a lot better now. Um, we'll see what happens with Nebraska. Maybe they'll get back up. But like there's teams in the Big Ten that you have to deal with. And then you have to deal with other conferences. I don't know. I don't know. That's
I
all I'm saying.
yeah, I mean, I just think that, if you're, and this could go with any job, if you or I went to a local station or a local radio station and our performance has been subpar, we're probably not going to get 7 years at a spot, especially if each and every year has been subpar and kind of a letdown. I mean, like, let's say you are, I mean, in local news, you usually have three other stations that you're kind of competing with for viewers. And if you're last, and especially if your show is last, if you're like the headliner show, management is going to stay on top of that, and management is going to notice that. And, I doubt we would get a contract extension or, 7 years at a spot, at least you would think.
Right.
With any job, if your performance is subpar and you're not living up to what people around you and people higher up are expecting, then you're probably not going to get brought back, or they'll find somebody who can. So I don't know if having Jim Harbaugh skate by subpar year after year after year is, I guess I don't know if fair is the good word to use, but it's like, why should we hold them to a higher,
How
or
many 9-3 and 8-4 years can you get from the guy? You know what I
right,
mean? I
right.
like
And
I know what you're saying. Like you have to perform. That's a job.
mhm, yeah, yeah. And I mean, like, it should be just like any other job that you see in your day-to-day life. You know, we don't go out and find little things to complain about why we couldn't get the job done. There are always underlying circumstances that if a day or two, you're late on a project, or something comes up family wise or something like that you wouldn't be able to get to something. But 7 years, the excuses are starting to run out, and I think that happened a couple of years ago with why just nothing seems to have grown in the last 6 or 7 years with
Yeah.
Michigan football. It should be the same as any other job, like you and I have.
And it seemed like it was getting better at first, 'cause those first 4 years, they were getting better.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Obviously COVID, like you said, it is an excuse. It shouldn't be the only excuse, or shouldn't be, used as a big reason why they didn't succeed. But if he keeps going the direction he's going, and they have another 8-4, 9-3 year where they're in the top 25, and they get the benefit of the doubt because they're Big Ten and they're playing Big Ten schools, and they linger around, and then they fall off and they're playing in the Outback Bowl again. No
Yeah.
offense to the Outback Bowl, but it's not the Rose Bowl. You know what I
No,
mean?
and it's one of those bowls that I know the Big Ten always sends a team to every year, but it's like the middle of the pack Big Ten teams. You're finishing
It's the
fifth or
fourth or fifth.
sixth.
Yeah, exactly, in that range.
Right. Right. And if that's going to be your biggest bowl that you're being sent to, like, you're not making it to the Rose Bowl or the playoff tournament, or the championship game. It's time to, in my opinion, find somebody who can.
I agree. I agree. And we're a few days away. We'll see what happens. I'm excited for college football. I love it. It's one
Me
of my
too.
favorite things of the year. Fall has objectively taken over as my favorite season, and I think the best season of the year. So I'm excited. We're almost in September. And it's gonna be great. And Erik
Yeah.
Kostrzewa, I hope the fall weather treats you well in Denver. Definitely, hopefully the winter treats you better than Michigan, because we both know it's not great.
and I've heard good things. It's not as gloomy or gray around here just because of being downwind from the mountains, and I could give a little bit of an explanation. But when you get the air moving over the mountains, especially if some of those mountains are able to push that air higher in the atmosphere, you're of course going to get clouds and rain. So there's probably going to be a lot of snow in the mountains. But since we're downwind from the mountains and that air starts to sink when it comes over, you get a lot of drying out of the atmosphere and warming things up. So that's at least one good thing about being just outside of the mountains, because yeah, you could get a ton of snow, but it's not going to last very long. Things are going to dry out, things are going to get sunny again. And I've heard that, after a snowstorm, it melts very quickly and you can get a day where you're back in the 50s in the middle of winter just because of the location we're at. So
Which is
I can't
literally
complain.
opposite of Michigan. It would
Right.
snow once, about 10 inches, and it would be there until the next time it snowed a week or
Yeah.
two later. And then that cycle would go until April. And obviously the cloudy days too. So
Yeah.
that's
I
the
mean,
thing.
when that cold air comes over the lake, it's not a good recipe for living very close to it. So
No.
it's beautiful in the summer, but
Oh,
when the
gorgeous.
winter comes around, it can get a little bit taxing,
Yes.
especially with how long you're stuck inside and how long you can go without actually seeing the sun. So
Yes. Well, neither of us have to deal with that anymore. I'm in Philly now. So
no.
not that the weather's great, but it's definitely not that. No offense to my Michigan people. Love y'all. Grand
Yeah.
Rapids is cool, but the the weather has its ups and downs. So
Right,
there's
right.
that.
Which is just typical Michigan weather. I feel like anybody that has lived there will say the same thing.
Everybody
It,
knows.
it, it it's great when it's great, but when it gets bad, it's pretty bad.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a thing. That's just what it is.
So yeah,
Erik Kostrzewa, though, thank you so much for coming on. Very much appreciated. Everybody go give him a follow right now, or as soon as you're done this, you can wait a few seconds, I guess. I don't know. But yeah, and thank you for tuning in. As always, make sure you follow me on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter at the Morello Show. And I think that's all I have. We'll see you guys next time.
sweet. Thanks for having me on, Kyle. I appreciate it.
You know it, bro. You know it.